Monty Dale. I'm a professional mixing and mastering engineer, and this is the Mix Engineer's Perspective, a podcast that I'm starting, and just because I love what I do. I love making music. I love mixing and mastering music. I've been doing it for a living for 15 years or so, and I've had some measure of success with it. Right now I'm ranked in the top 2% in the world in all mixing engineers and in the top 2% in the world in all mastering engineers on Muso, and I have a little over 80 million plays as of the date of recording this. And, and I think when I looked at what's out there on YouTube and on other podcasts that are doing this, I think there's a lot of great material, and there's also a lot of material where I looked at it and was like, wow, there's opportunity here to straighten a few things out, and I want to share my background as well as my experience in mixing, talk about some of the tools and the way I think about EQ and compression, the way I think about mixing, like my organizational process, like how do I go about mixing a song, like, and what are some of the situations where, my organizational process can save time, and maybe it'll help you, So I'm hoping that some of my experiences can help you have a better experience mixing, improvement in your own mixes, as well as really, just a better understanding, especially if you're starting out. I wish I had a podcast like this to listen to where someone with my level of experience actually told me how to do it. So that's what I'm hoping. I'm very new to the podcast world too. Admittedly, I don't listen to a lot of podcasts. I've listened to a few. But I think that, so if I do some things on here that are not abnormal, like you've never seen it happen, well, that's just my ignorance. So I apologize in advance for that. But I think this should be fun. And, that's the goal here. I love making music. And if you like making music too, maybe we can learn from each other. And I'd love to understand what problems you have with your own mixes. You can always reach out to me. My email is monty@mixedbymonty.com. If you're interested in having your own product mixed and mastered, you can always reach out to me as well. I think you'll find my pricing is very, very reasonable. Most of the time, people look at my pricing and go, wait, what? You can't be any good if you charge that. And I think you'd be surprised. So, yeah. So thank you for tuning in. And if you're interested in hearing something I've done, like recently I mixed a track for Jenna Davis. It's called DiCaprio. And you can find that on all platforms now. And there's a great music video for it on YouTube as well. So thank you for joining me. And, so who am I? How did I get started in this? I think that's a good place to start. So I played in drums and bands. I've been playing drums since I was about 7 years old. I got my first snare drum when I was 7. And I got a drum set shortly after that for Christmas one year. And then I got into bands. And one of my best friends, his name is Keith, he'd play guitar and we'd go and jam in his garage. And it was fun. And that was my childhood. And then, when I went to college, I got a degree in electrical engineering with a specialization in audio from the University of Miami. And that was a great learning experience as well. But I think after that, when I was in the working world, I worked for Bose for a period of time, and I got into a band and decided, hey, maybe we'll start recording our band sessions. So I bought an interface and got a computer and started to, record our sessions. I'd go home, listen to what I recorded, try to mix it the best I could, then listen to the output and be like, wow, this is not even close to what, what stuff sounds like on the radio. So I kind of fell in love with the chase, with this idea that you could sound as good as something on the radio. I mean, how is that possible? How is it done? So I kind of started to learn. I did a lot of trial and error, and really took what I learned in college along with just learning DAWs, learning how digital audio workstations operated, understanding signal flow, and really just starting to take a really high level view in that. Did that for several years. And then I was in an apartment in Framingham, and I befriended this guy down the hall, and he actually was a rapper, and he come over and he saw I had a setup. He was like, "Hey, do you make beats? Do you want to record anything?" And I'm like, "Sure." So we started to make beats, and he went into my walk-in closet with had a bunch of clothes in it and record vocals, and we had a great time. And I think, I started to learn quite a bit about that process from that. And then he invited his friends over, and they were like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this. Like, what do you charge?" And that was the magic question. What do you charge? I went, wow, this could be a business. And at the time I was like, yeah, that's kind of neat. So I said, I'll get back to you. And then, so I came up with a business concept and started to charge, and I think I started at like $20 an hour, something like that. Just, helping rappers in the area, and then a couple of guys that came in, ended up doing something, and with their career, they ended up becoming the Dean's List, and his name at the time is Sonny Shots, and now he goes by SNNY, and Aziz and I have been friends for quite a while, and but he came in and we recorded a mixtape way back then, and in my apartment, one of my apartment studios, because I had apartment studios after that time for a few years, and we had a great time. And later on, he joined up with another guy, with another two guys actually, and joined and created the Dean's List. And the Dean's List had some great success in 2010. They had one of the largest mixtapes in the world, and shortly after that, and I wasn't even a part of that mixtape whatsoever. I actually was driving to the studio one day. I was driving through Framingham, and I saw this guy and the girl walking on down the street, and I was like, "Wait a second, I recognize that guy." And it was Sonny at that. I was like, "Wow!" So I pulled up and said, "Hey, what's up?" And he's like, "Hey, man," and he said they were looking to record, and we hit it off again, and I was like, "Yeah, sure." My studio's still down the street. I had a commercial space at that time, and they ended up coming through. We ended up, they had they had done all the recording for the record, so I ended up mixing and mastering it, and that ended up being Generation X. And on April 3rd, 2012, it came out and was like number 3 in the world in the hip hop genre on iTunes, which is a really big deal. The only reason why it wasn't number 1 is Nicki Minaj released a record that day. So I think, we had some measure of success with that. And that was the moment I was like, wow. It just kind of took me by surprise. And I developed great, long-lasting relationships with both Sonny and Aziz and Alex Mendoza, who is the producer for the Dean's List. And Alex later on, we and him worked together with the King's Dead. Sonny and Alex became the King's Dead shortly after that, and we did several records over the years with him and mixed and mastered all of those, and they had some measure of success as well. It was great, and that's how my career kind of started. And all the meantime, all the while that's happening, of course, I'm doing local clientele as well. And I've had a number of clients that I've worked with for years and developed great relationships with that are really doing a lot with this. And I'm really fortunate to have made those relationships early on. It was really like right place at the right time, right skill level, and it all kind of came together. And I think that's really what it takes. It's about preparing yourself for that moment and being open to those opportunities and building strong, lasting relationships. I think that has definitely been a cornerstone of my career and really allowed me to achieve some measure of success. So I'm thankful for the relationships I have, and they've led to other relationships, and it's kind of a snowball effect, because I think some of the guys, I'm working with now are because I worked with them, and I'm in the position I'm in now because I've had all of that experience over the time frame I have. And I think that, there's not really a shortcut to that. It's really, you take the time, you learn, you make mistakes, you screw up mixes, you do the best you can, you take time with it, and you really learn. And I think over time you develop an eye and an ear for what sounds good. And that's really why I wanted to create this, because I wanted to talk about a mix engineer's perspective. A lot of podcasts talk about different gear and how to use the gear, and I think that's all fine and good. I think in learning the tools is really, really critical, of course. But at the end of the day, what makes a great mix engineer is their perspective. The top mix engineers in the world are paid because of their taste, because of what they think, what their idea of what great sounds like. And I think it's a combination of when you have an artist and you have their idea of what great sounds like, and you have an engineer whose idea of what great sounds like, those two blend together, and you want them to complement one another so that the combination of those two things create some musical masterpiece that goes on to move the world. And I think when you're thinking about what does great sound like, it's important to really listen to music that's out there that is really good and actually develop your own opinion of what great sounds like. And I what I say all the time is artists, engineers, producers, their idea of what amazing sounds like is what limits you. So it's about learning what great sounds like. And I think if you want to make money in this industry, if you're really trying to improve your clientele, if you're trying to grow your own business doing this, or if you're an artist and you're trying to make it as an artist, you're limited by your idea of what great sounds like. And as that grows, so will your artistry, so will your fan base, so will your success. And I think that's something to really consider, when you're thinking about it, because I see a lot of music get put out very quickly, and people are they're quick to put out something. They want to do a song an hour in the studio, and they want it to be perfect, of course. And they're just putting it out there fast, thinking that by putting out a lot of music, you're somehow, there's a better chance of you making it. And the idea is that you only really need to win once. You need one track to win. And I've had several artists that I've worked with have those one tracks. And it's really great to see that when it happens. But I think it's important to keep your eye on quality. When you get your music onto Spotify and it gets into a playlist, how it measures up with the tracks around it from sonically will make a big difference. Because if people are listening to music in a playlist and it gets to your song and there's a massive difference or a big change that occurs, you're like, what is this? And then they could skip you. And now that change could be a good thing. It could be something like, wow, what is this? I've never heard this before. And that's your goal, of course. Your goal is to move the listener in some way so that they go, wow, how do I get this? I want to listen to this more. And they put it in their playlists and they listen to it over and over again. And it's all about converting listens to followers, right, on Spotify. And then the followers, of course, you're hoping become fans that show up to your show and buy merch and buy, tickets to your show. And that's, of course, how the world goes around. So we want to try to get there. And it's important to remember that your perspective of what great sounds like, your goal is to have that sound as close to what the world looks at as great as possible. And this can vary by genre. Of course, it's important, like whatever genre you're an artist in or whatever genre you're engineering, it's important to understand what does that genre need for the listener to be moved by it. And I think as you grow, you start to realize that it's less about how something sounds. Like anybody can make something sound good or crispy, right? It's whether or not it feels good or not. I think that is a really critical piece to this. And that's what I'd like to talk about, because I think it's the one thing when I look at the world and the way we all think about this thing, it's the one part that's missing a lot of times for me in many podcasts or other musical avenues that talk about music. I think it's a really critical component to this. And so I'm going to be putting out more episodes. We're going to be talking about equalization. We're going to be talking about compression. We're going to be talking about, maybe listening to some examples, and if you're interested in hearing some of the work that I've put out there, I'll have links for that as well You can see my discography. I currently have about 680 professional credits on Muso, and I'm ranked in the top 2%, as I said, in both mixing and mastering. And, if you'd like your product mixed, you can reach me at Monty at mixedbymonty.com. And I do own and operate Graybeard Recording Studios out of Framingham, Massachusetts. And I'll be pulling in some of my clients to talk about their perspectives on mixing and mastering music. And, I think it's important to understand like artist perspectives, producers' perspectives, engineers' perspectives, other engineers that I know in the area. I'd like to get them on here as well. And, let's talk shop. Let's talk about music and making it. And how do you move the speakers to move the listener? How do you do that? So again, I'd like to thank you for joining me. Subscribe and, hit that like button. I appreciate that very much. And thank you for tuning in. I'm Monty Dale, and this is the Mix Engineer's Perspective. Thank you.